Well, good morning everybody. Welcome to New Botany on this Saturday morning, the 4th of July in England. It's about 7:15. As you can see, this is a busy road. And this piece of land, a large area, 2 acres, has been awaiting development on this site since probably 10 or 15 years. No one's bought it. It's been fenced off, but the fences have fallen down, and it's now easily accessible for looking at the pioneering plants that are growing here. And I don't think it's anything really exciting or special, but we'll have a look. And really this site has the characteristics of a volcanic lava field. Some of the rock is tarmac, some of it's stone. There aren't really any piles of rubble here, but you can see a large number of mosses growing here as turfs. And as I say, they've had 15 years to grow here, and we'll have a look at the mosses individually. But many of them, you can see, it's been very dry here, droughty for the last weeks or month maybe. And a lot of these mosses, which were firmly attached to the substrate, are now just coming off in great swathes. And I can just move them and push them. They fall to bits, they crumble. But let's have a look at some of the other plants that are growing here first. Not much of any great interest though, I think. One of the main colonizers here is white melilot, and it's a bit of a weedy plant. It's almost going over now, a member of the Fabaceae, the pea family, which of course are nitrogen fixers, and that's what these plants have to be able to do to survive in an area like this. And there are buddleias here, of course, which are very attractive to bees, and various grasses. We've got yarrow here, Achillea millefolium, always a colonizer on these bare sites. And some wonderful dwarfed poppies here, growing among the gravel. These are pretty short. I'm not quite sure what kind of poppies these are, but you can tell from the fruits, usually. Dominating, we have these moss cushions here. And I think the majority of them will be Didymodon nicholsonii. They've got that look about them, which is fairly distinctive. But again, all of these areas of moss are completely detached. They're just floating on the soil, on the rock here, which is not tarmac, it's some kind of stone, maybe limestone. I'm not absolutely sure about that. And we've got some large Artemisia plants. Artemisia mugwort. Nice to see them here. And they're very tall. Obviously the conditions are suiting them. More white melilots here. And really wonderful to find are these, I think, cotton thistles. I think they're cotton thistles. They're certainly very well, not glaucous. They have a sheen to them, a coating, which is an indicator that they are light growing in arid conditions. It's really good to see them here. Cotton thistle. In fact, this is the first ones I've seen around Nottingham. And a nice orange sow thistle here. Very unusual one with an unusual colour. I'm not sure what this one is, and to be honest I'm going to have to go and look it up. It's not bristly ox tongue, it's another kind of sow thistle, maybe an orange one. But again here, a large area of moss where all the cushions, all of the plants are completely detached from the surface. They're just like they're floating on the surface of the soil. And how have they come like this and why have they become like this? Well, we'll cover that towards the end of the video. And more of these orange sow thistles here. First time I've seen these plants. And the one's got a bee or a fly on it there. Very unusual. This rock reminds me somewhat of a road. Maybe this at some point was the development of a road. And the plants here are mainly restricted to soil areas that have been developed. And here there are a lot of Canadian fleabane plants. The only plants growing on the rock itself, which I suppose is rather like a lava field and how mosses would develop on a lava field, are these here. And they've actually developed the soil that they're growing on, but have become strongly detached again. All of these mosses are crumbling off the surface because of the drought and because they've dried out. And lots of brambles growing here amongst the buddleias. And here's a large moss field. And you can see it's produced a soil, and if I was to collect all these mosses up, I'd have an enormous bag of soil and potting compost which I could use for growing my houseplants or garden plants in, or simply adding to the soil. The mosses create an organic matter and then they collect dust around themselves as they grow. But these have obviously finished their growing cycle in this area. They're all turning to dust, but there are a huge number of them. Two other plants growing here. This is Weld, Reseda lutea. Not growing on the stone, but growing on the gravelly soil and gravelly spoil that's here. This one is Canadian fleabane, colonize canadensis. You can see its typical white flower with a very yellow centre. Canadian fleabane. Other thistle colonizers are creeping thistle, and right growing right next to it, spear thistle. And of course these are British natives. And here in this area the moss has become predominant on the stone. Some very large patches of moss here, and I said a few months ago in a video that mosses aggressively invade. Well, they certainly do invade. They've covered a large proportion of these rocky areas which I think are limestone. And I know that the kind of plants that are going to be dominant here are Didymodon luridus and Didymodon nicholsonii, possibly Didymodon rigidulus as well, but I don't think rigidulus is going to be growing here because this is mainly limestone rock. That makes it a bit different from volcanic rock, which is tends to be basalt or more slightly acidic. more large areas of moss here. These look a lot like Didymodon nicholsonii, which would be classic inhabitants of this kind of rocky area. And again, they're all completely loose. This one isn't quite loose yet, but these are. All these others around it are loose. Some of these mosses growing here are Centrichias, the screw mosses. But despite being different, they're still coming off easily in large patches. There's no attachment of these mosses to the rock that they're attached to. There must have been originally, but there isn't any now. I wanted to explain to you how I think these pads of moss growing in a simulated lava field become floating mosses. And here we've got a patch of Didymodon luridus, one of the mosses common on the site. And here it is in its hydrated state. And if you look at the pad of moss flat on, side on, you can see that it's perfectly flat when the moss is hydrated. And in this situation, you'd expect the pad of moss to be attached to the medium that it's growing on. However, when the moss is completely desiccated, when it dries out, as in a drought, then the moss contracts strongly as it dries, pulling up the soil around the edge, thus detaching the moss pad, making it become a floater. Thanks for watching.